Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, your host for tonight. It's Friday, so I'm of course joined by the wonderful Sarah Daly. Sarah, how has this week treated you?
Yeah, it was quick, but it
Quick.
was good. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have our Fridays back together. So I'm really, really
I've
happy to
missed
be
this so
here.
much.
Oh, I've missed this so much, Lewis. I hope you're jealous. No, I'm joking.
I hope everyone's jealous. Fridays are my favourite, and it is because of you. I don't
Oh,
care. I'm just going to say
yay. Yay.
it.
I'm happy. Yeah, it's a good day. Plus, it's a nice way to round off the week, I
Yeah,
think. So yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
Okay, so coming up on tonight's show, we've got Yusuf quits as Reform chair. The UK media is in an ownership crisis. There's been a report from the Media Reform Coalition talking about media and ownership, and Musk and Trump feud explodes. As always, remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. We'll be getting to your comments at the end, so also make sure you're very busy in the chat, as you are, as always. I can't wait to the end. But on to our first story. Yusuf, the Reform Party's chair, has stepped down and left the party. 11 months ago, I became chairman of Reform. I've worked full-time as a volunteer to take the party from 14 to 30%, quadrupled its membership, and delivered historical electoral results. I no longer believe working to get a Reform government elected is a good use of my time, and hereby resign the office. So you heard there that Reform's performance has transformed in the last 11 months, they're leading in multiple polls and winning hundreds of council seats. So why would he leave? Well, just days before, Reform's newest MP, Sarah Pochin, called for a burqa ban in Parliament.
Sarah Pochin. Yeah.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, with no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, I should probably...
He's not very good at that, is he? But anyway, this then sparked a row, as according to Yusuf, he had no idea this would be asked and claimed that this wasn't even party policy. Now, Katie Hopkins chimed in with a pretty disgusting tweet. Dear Yusuf Mohammed, a Reform Party spokesperson says a burqa ban is not party policy. This you at work again, Mo? What next? Sarah Pochin threatened you in the office? Need to report her to the police. Burqa ban must be party policy. Zaya responded by saying, well, nothing to do with me. I had no idea about the question, nor that it wasn't policy. Busy with other stuff. I do think it's dumb for a party to ask the PM if they would do something the party itself wouldn't do. I think it's clear what's going on here. Yusuf, who is a Muslim, was involved with Reform for his own class interests. He's a wealthy businessman, and Reform was created to be puppets for billionaires and corporations. But what he didn't have in mind was the membership and the right-wing commentariat also want to push reactionary policies too, and that's why he's left. Now, interestingly, Farage went on TV and attacked the alt-right for Yusuf leaving.
On X in particular, it's full of vile trolls, particularly the alt-right types, who have been just outright horrific towards Zia right from the very start.
Sarah, this exposes the splits within Reform. You've got people such as Sarah Pochin, Lee Anderson, and its membership who are reactionaries, and others who are only there to represent capital. Do you think this is a sign of things to come? There's no coherent policy. Do you think the party will fall under its own weights? And do you think this would, could even affect their election chances?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, Yusuf didn't join Reform to fight for working class interests. He is a wealthy businessman. He does represent his own class interests. And that, for me, kind of kind of encapsulates it all. The Reform Party in and of itself is a perfect example of a party that's built off of grief and grievances rather than actually genuine political principles that they want to see legitimate and tangible change happen. I think what's happened, and I want to speak about Yusuf just really quickly, it's interesting because he represents a marginalised community that tries to emulate the majority by being a part of Reform. And I think him leaving shows that the Reform Party is so disjointed in many ways. I think he's underestimated the toxic forces that exist within the party, and that these populist projects inevitably unleash. And I know for a fact that if he stayed within that party, not that his reputation is already not ruined, I think it's ruined entirely, but being a part of a political movement that's not coherent at all in the slightest means that he has been part of a vehicle that was destined for disaster anyway. I mean, we do see Reform doing quite well in the polls, but I think with the removal of certain people from that party and the things that they're now saying, I think that they might, and maybe my prediction is entirely wrong because I tend to be wrong about a lot of things. I do think that this will hinder the way that they're situated within politics as a whole. I don't think that you can genuinely have people in Parliament saying, yeah, let's ban the burqa. Like, I think that already puts the party on very, very shaky ground. The party's already on shaky ground, but then when you're saying very, very, very reactionary things, and I think that means that you're going to topple the party even more. But I think Farage, because you'd mentioned about the alt-right, but Farage attacking the alt-right, I think it's just pure damage control. I think he knows.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because it is interesting. He's in that clip there. He publicly disowned the alt-right, and obviously that's going to upset his online supporters and his base. Yeah. But in terms of trying to win an election, I mean, do you think this is smart of him?
No, I do personally, because he knows Reform is attracting voters who are really harmful. He knows that he's attracting voters who are extreme in nature. And that, I think, means that electorally, they might render themselves like in a really, really difficult position. But I think the bind is, if he reins them in, he risks losing that online base. I think we know for a fact that the right-wingers or alt-right exist online, and that kind of fuels Reform's momentum. Reform do well because they have so much dominance online. I mean, I don't want to give them credit, but social media for them booms. They do a fucking great job on there. And so if you've got the alt-right who fuel that base in the first place, then he's going to miss out on that. But if he doesn't, then I think the party becomes almost unpalatable to swing voters and major donors. So structurally, again, I think the party's on shaky ground. But if he's making those decisions, and I think he's going to put the party in a more legitimate position. Yeah. But I think it will struggle to sustain itself.
I think that's what it is. I mean, they brought in Zaya Yusuf to professionalise the party, right? And that's what they have become. Well, actually, I was sort of, right? And what I mean by that is getting 30% in the polls. Farage, in terms of rhetoric, trying to be more of a serious party. Yeah. And the whole calling for a burqa ban, that's so UKIP from like 10 years ago, and that doesn't scream like professional party, and I think that's what Farage is doing, right? I mean, obviously he's not ideologically opposed to that, but also I mean, I'm thinking, Zaya, like, are you thick as well? Like,
he's thick.
I mean,
he's thick.
He wants a party that wants to look. He wants a party that represents capital. Reform do that, right? But is he not aware of all the reactionary and Islamophobic and racist policies or rhetoric that is attached to Reform? Did he not know about this? Did he only just wake up and realize, oh, now it affects me personally? Maybe that's what it was.
That's embarrassing, though. But, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's embarrassing to think, you know for a fact that you're in a party with Farage, who's literally built his career off of anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim sentiment. And now that he's disavowing this alt-right contingent of his following, I'm like, Yusuf, how did you not see this before? Like, how did you not see that this is what the party was basically built off of? I'm now seeing online Reform voters basically saying we need to make, Britain great again. And I'm thinking, what is this weird populist sentiment that's now coming into play? But yeah, I do think that Yusuf is thick. So it took for all of that for you to realise that, oh, the Reform Party doesn't like people like you. Like, come on.
I also think
on.
as well, though, he probably gave himself a level of tolerance where he thought, look, at the end of the day, what matters the most, and this is the same with everyone essentially, is how much money I've got and whether this can make me more money and make me more powerful. And I will tolerate a certain amount of Islamophobia, bigotry, and xenophobia. And maybe this was like a step too far, which obviously says a lot about his character anyway. I mean, this is, him stepping down his chair isn't like, oh, wow, good for you. It's terrible because, like, you know what you're getting into. And I also suspect if it was xenophobia against any other community but not Muslims, he would have stuck with it. It's kind of like, what it really reminds me of is gay Republicans, and I mean politicians or someone who has a gay member of their family. Republicans are just completely homophobic, and you might see like every now and again where Republican comes out and says, actually, I'm in favor of a gay marriage because it turns out they had a brother, sister, daughter, or whoever comes out as gay, and it's like, yeah, okay, so you change it when it directly affects you, but that's it.
Yeah.
I
have a question for you, like, because in the Spectator it said that they think that Yusuf's departure won't impact reform at all. Do you think that is true? They confidently said that Yusuf's resignation won't harm reform for long, and they argued that the party's appeal wasn't about one man. But then in Yusuf's statement, he had literally said, well, I took reform from 14 to 30%. So he basically said that I think he said something about like a quadrupled or something. I can't remember what it is.
I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. And first of all, he's being a bit egotistical here when he says, I took the party from 14 to 30%. So it wasn't him. I mean, he probably had a part of that, but let's be honest. Two things at play. One, obviously, trust in the government has gone down. And two, you got social media, which in terms of algorithms, love the right wing. I think, given Elon Musk's proximity to reform, we absolutely know they're pushing them out there. I mean, I know Rupert Lowe isn't in reform, but he was in reform. You can see that he literally makes money from his tweets, like thousands of pounds per month, right? Then you've got GB News, which is an entire media network which backs reform. So that has had far more to do with the rise in reform, which is why I don't think it's going to make much of a difference with Zaya Yusuf going. What it could potentially damage them is, I don't know, like they're on around 30%. If there was an election held today, they wouldn't get 30%, but I could see them getting 25%, right? But there's probably a ceiling if they're just trying to appeal to the right wing, and that's it. I think Zaya's inclusion in the party was, again, that sort of professionalism. And if they want to get 35%, 40%, they're going to have to expand even further. I don't expect reform to get that anyway, because I don't think any political party in Britain can get 35%. Because people need to remember, right, reform aren't particularly popular. They're just as unpopular as any other party. If you're under first past the post, if you're polling at 25, 30%, that's not great. It's not a good thing. It's just that everyone else is equally as unpopular, and that's allowed reform to rise. So broadly, I don't think it makes a big difference. And I do think it will, unfortunately, rile up the online sphere, the really, really radical elements of reform, like the core membership and the activists. I mean, you're going to see far more Islamophobia being thrown at Zaya Yusuf. And as much as I really don't like the guy, I don't think anyone should be facing that kind of abuse.
No, I don't think that's ever warranted. But I do think like this public falling out shines a light on reform's identity crisis.
Absolutely,
I think they do have an identity crisis. And it's like this big tent insurgent party caught in like these city backers and disaffected Tories with like talk of tax cuts and all this sort of stuff and tech innovation. But then I also look at them and I'm like, is this UKIP 2.0 like peddling this nativist culture and trying to invest in these culture wars, talking about burqa bans? Like, I think trying to be both is just a recipe for a schism, and that worries me. But I think we've seen far right populists, because I do think of UKIP quite considerably. Their revolving door leadership and the feuds once Brexit was actually achieved is one that I won't forget, because they imploded almost immediately after. And I think if Farage's reform, oscillates between not knowing or to its alt-right base and trying to sanitize its image, then I don't actually think that they present themselves as a serious party. Like pick where you want to be. I mean, but I also know that politics is a spectrum, but I think they've made it pretty apparent that your views are very anti-migrant, anti-Muslim, anti-this, anti-that. Let's be pro-Britishness, and a certain type of Britishness too. And now you want to like say, no, I want to now make us a little bit more palatable for the nation. I don't know.
I mean, I
It's
do
weird.
think when certain MPs are calling to ban the burqa, right? Even to be fair, if you were to poll the country, I would be surprised the majority said yes. However, I do think that kind of thing does harm reform. Because again, reform aren't just trying to get 15% of the population. They're trying to be a party of government. And they're trying to bring ex-Tory voters, Labour voters. And for me, let's be honest, I think the core of the enthusiasm for reform is because they're angry with the status quo. And I don't think calling for a burqa ban is that thing. It is like a throwback to 2005, or whatever.
Yeah, it is.
So, all right, let's move on though, because that was 25 minutes of that story. Really interesting, but we have got other ones to go through. So let's move on to a second story of the evening. The Media Reform Coalition has released a report into media ownership, and its findings show our media is in deep, deep crisis. 7 of the top 15 online platforms used to access news in the UK are controlled by Meta, Google, and X Corp. Google commands 93% of UK search engine use, while Meta and Google together account for 3/5 of all UK advertising spend, giving these two big tech companies unrivaled control over how news is found, accessed, and funded online. Just 3 companies, DMG Media, News UK, and Reach, control 90% of UK national newspaper circulation, a 20% increase in market concentration since 2014. These same 3 companies account for over 40% of the combined reach of the UK's top 50 online news brands, giving these publishers significant power to set and steer the national news agenda. The UK's local newspapers are dominated by a tiny handful of corporate chain publishers, with just 2 companies, NewQuest and National World, controlling 51% of the UK's 882 local newspapers and online local news websites. In commercial radio, just 2 companies, Bauer and Global, only 2/3 of the UK's national DAB radio stations, and more than 60% of local analogue stations. Bauer, Global, and News Broadcasting, owned by publishers News UK, together control more than 3/4 of the UK's national DAB radio market. Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus account for 75% of all UK video on demand subscriptions. Almost half of the value of TV commissions by the UK's major broadcasters went to just 12 companies, despite these largest producers making up 4% of the entire UK independent production sector. But it's not just the companies. Who specifically owns all of our media? Well, you won't be surprised to who they actually are. Jonathan Harmsworth, Viscount Rothermere, Daily Mail and General Trust chairman, and sole owner of the Daily Mail and General Trust, and great-grandson of the founder of the Daily Mail, Rothermere controls 43% of the UK's national newspaper market through the Daily Mail, Mail on Sunday, The Eye and Metro. The Murdoch family, of course. Rupert Murdoch's News UK controls 1/3 of the national newspaper market. News UK also operates Talk TV, Talk Radio, and Talk Sport. Murdoch's News UK has paid out more than £1 billion in legal settlements for victims of phone hacking and press intrusion perpetuated by reporters and private detectives working for News of the World and The Sun. But the company has never been held accountable in an open court. Paul Marshall, co-owner and founder of GB News, as well as owner of Unheard and The Spectator magazine, which he purchased for £100 million in September 2024. Marshall's media titles are highly influential for cementing and establishing conservative views and voices in the wider news agenda. GB News and The Spectator have regularly been found in breach of broadcasting and editorial standards by Ofcom and the press regulator IPSO. A hedge fund manager with an individual net worth of £875 million, Marshall is a major contributor to right-wing causes and has proposed funding a new generation of journalists and commentators, with backing from leading UK Conservative politicians. And finally, let's take a look at the tech bros who own our social media. So, of course, Elon Musk, Twitter is the UK's 5th most used source for news online. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. So in the UK, 56% of people who get their news online do so through Meta's websites, apps, and services. Meta also dominates the online advertising market, with Facebook and Instagram accounting for over half, so 7.2 billion in 2025, of all UK display advertising spends. Jeff Bezos, Amazon Prime is the UK's second largest streaming service, while Amazon Music, Audible, and Amazon Smart Speakers dominate the digital audio and music markets. He also owns the Washington Post, purchased in 2013 for $250 million, and is alleged to have directly interfered in the paper's coverage of the 2024 US election after personal meetings with Donald Trump. Now, earlier today, I spoke to Tom Chivers from the Media Reform Coalition and author of the report. So this report you've done for the Media Reform Coalition, I mean, what's the biggest takeaway from the research into media ownership?
I think the biggest takeaway for us in this new edition is that the crisis in media ownership is getting worse. With every time we've done this report, all of the figures are either staying as they are, which is not good because the concentration levels are already very high across the media, or they're getting worse and deeper. So the core statistics that 90% of national newspaper circulation is still controlled by the same three dominant publishing giants should really sound an alarm for the state of our media, the state of our news, the state of our politics. In local newspapers as well, the continued decline, the closure of local newspapers is really, really alarming because it means more and more communities, more and more towns and cities around the country are either getting less news or have no local news made in and about their communities whatsoever. Concentrations in broadcast, in radio, in podcasts, in online platforms, especially the online platforms that now determine how much of the online media is distributed and shared and accessed by the UK public. The three dominant players, Alphabet that owns Google, Meta that owns Facebook, and X Corp, which owns X/Twitter, these are the dominant players in how information, news, and media is shared and found online. And they are not sharing it in an open and plural and equal way. They have really deep biases and controls, the algorithms and the recommendations that determine how news is shared. All of these systems about how we find news and information online, offline, newspapers, broadcasters, it's all controlled by the same bunch of dominant players whose control and power is getting even worse over time.
I mean, the report shows that billionaires dominate local newspapers, as you mentioned. So despite social media and many news sources being online, is local journalism and local papers still a big influence?
I think local journalism is still very, very important to people. The fact that these local news websites regularly brag about the tens of millions of viewers or tens of millions of readers, the tens of millions in traffic that these websites receive shows that people in their communities really crave. They want to know what's going on in their towns and their local communities. But because so much of that space is dominated by just three large players, NewsQuest, National World, and Reach, their access, the kind of news that's being produced for them is incredibly commercialized, it's incredibly homogenized. Many of these local papers that used to exist as distinct local titles in a town or a community have now been rolled into these very generic online news hubs that might be representing an entire county or an entire region. So people's desire for local news is perhaps stronger than ever because of the opportunities there are with social media, with digital platforms to create new connections with local people. But the news that's being made for local communities is getting further and further detached from actually reporting what's happening on someone's street or in their town.
I want to ask you, when you speak to people, they will say, yeah, I mean, of course the media is owned by oligarchs. They're owned by a handful of people. That's not surprising. And this report isn't surprising in terms of its conclusion. But I think the levels of concentration is a big deal, and also specifically who, because people have this idea that okay, it's these sort of cabal of people, but that's it really. And also that also leads to conspiracies where people sort of make up or put someone in that position in their own minds of who controls the media, but we can see specifically who, right?
I mean, this is the core for why we've been publishing this report for the last 10 years is people have a sense that the media is broken, it's owned by a few oligarchs. But until they see the statistics and they can attach those statistics to particular large corporations, particular media moguls, and now particular big tech billionaires, there isn't that sense or there isn't that understanding that this, at its core, This is all about market power. This is who controls the means of production of news. This is who owns the channels of how news is produced, accessed, and shared. This is about who pays journalists, how much they pay them. This is about how advertising revenue is generated for news, which is a huge concern not just for the largest newspaper outlets or largest broadcasters or commercial news outlets. It's a huge concern for independent media as well, where if we're trying to set up new platforms and make them financially sustainable, when all of the advertising revenue via online platforms is controlled by basically two companies, Meta and Google, that makes it very difficult for independent platforms to be able to rely on how they're going to get money. And if these platforms decide that the kind of content they're producing isn't attractive to advertisers, and so those independent sources are less favored by advertising, that's a real constraint. That's a direct kind of oppressive mechanism on the kind of news that can make money online. So that's the purpose of this report, is to put real statistics, real evidence on what people understand to already be a very concentrated and very captured media and news landscape, and to point out that these are dangerous levels of market and corporate power, and that by having the statistics, we hope that we can show that there's something that can be done about it. This isn't just the way things have to be. This isn't a natural state of affairs. If we know the shares of the media markets that are owned by the monopolistic corporate giants, if we know just how much of our online media landscape is controlled by the same two companies, if we know and we can name and show with numbers how much the local press has been ruined and dilapidated by these kind of homogenous commercial chain publishers, we can do something about it.
Over the last 30, 40 years, people have really understood that, yes, the media is oligarchical, it's owned by the 1%, and you can't really argue against that. But what you will have is certain people, or certain groups of people, particularly on the right, will say, yeah, it's true, but it's owned by the left. The BBC is left-wing. It's left-wing corporations. I would say that's an oxymoron. They would say that, and they're pushing a left-wing agenda. So it's not that people are trying to say, no, there's no conspiracy of corporate ownership of the media. Everybody knows that, and this report, again, doesn't expose something new in that regard. But what is important is to point out that who owns it. It's not the left, as some would say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think on the point of the BBC specifically, there has been a lot of research, academic research, market studies done that show that because the BBC's own news production has declined so precipitously with funding cuts, with its move away from sort of original journalism, actually a lot of the BBC's news agenda is being led more and more by what's going on in the wider media, rather than the BBC itself leading on what should be in the national news agenda. What are the important topics for the day? More often, the BBC is led by the rest of the media, and you see that on their morning news programs where they're shuffling through the national newspapers. You see it on the panelists they invite onto their shows, and that's reflected, or that is a reflection of, the concentration in the wider media markets. If the BBC is relying on what are the papers saying, what are the other big broadcasters saying, what's big on social media, all of those spaces are dominated predominantly by right-wing voices, large corporate oligarchs, big tech billionaires, the same media moguls we've been dealing with in this country for 40 or 50 years. So these accusations of left-wing bias or kind of left-wing monopolies in the news just don't stand up to scrutiny. They don't stand up to the facts and the statistics of who owns the media, what are the big companies, what shares of markets do they own, how much audience control do they have, where is the advertising revenue going? If you look at the relationship between the large online advertising platforms, Meta and Alphabet, and where a lot of the advertising money is going, it's not being distributed to a plural range of diverse voices across independent and alternative media. It's all being funneled towards the same giant legacy corporations, News UK, DMG Media, Reach. The list goes on as it does in our report. So the sense that something is wrong with our media is very widespread. The reality is that it's all concentrated towards a small handful of predominantly right-wing corporate giants.
What laws or regulations would you like to see that could tackle the crisis of media ownership? And this is obviously from papers to broadcast to social media.
Straightforwardly, there has to be a cap across all media markets of how large a share any corporate entity can own of any media market. So say, for example, that no newspaper publisher should be allowed to control more than 30% of that market. That would immediately lead to the breakup of two of the largest publishing companies, which together account for, I think, 70%. If you include Reach, DMG Media, and News UK, they control 90%. But DNG Media on its own, Lord Rothermere's company, controls almost 50% of national circulation. That's a huge level for a single corporate publisher to control in any one media market. So introducing clear caps that say you cannot own more than this share, whether it's of national newspapers, of the broadcasting sector, radio, online platforms, that's a simple way of starting to break up the concentrated corporate power. I think beyond that, we also have to start looking at public interest obligations. So not just breaking up market power, but where there are concentrations of market power, reversing it and making it work to the benefit of the public and to the benefit of a more plural and diverse news landscape. So you could say, for example, well, you as a company own 30% of the media market. You're not allowed to go over that due to market cap, but that's still a huge share for any one company to own of a media market. There should be responsibilities on the largest companies, even below the cap, to invest in investigative reporting or to help subsidize independent and local sources of news as a way of kind of remedying and reversing what has gone wrong in the media markets beyond ownership concentration, the collapse in journalism, the collapse in local news, requiring the largest corporate players to have public responsibilities through obligations that would be applied to them if they owned larger shares of a media market. I think, lastly, beyond that as well, we have to have a fit and proper persons test that actually asks who owns our media, what kind of commitments do they have to independent, rigorous, accurate, ethical news production, ethical media production, and having tests that say if you're trying to own or purchase a slice of our media, you should have to pass a pretty high bar for the kind of responsibilities and standards we would expect in a democratic society for the kind of power that owning media gives to somebody. So the mix of those three things, market caps that say you cannot own more than a certain amount as a basic anti-monopoly measure, public interest obligations that put public responsibilities on the people who own the media, and a fit and proper persons test that would stop people who have been shown to be engaged in corporate corruption, in illegal or unethical practices, who are simply not fit and proper to own our media. Those three measures together, I think, are essential to try and restore plurality and diversity to our media landscape.
That was Tom Chivers from the Media Reform Coalition. Sarah, I want to get your thoughts on this. The media is the biggest obstacle, I think, to change. Right, it's why we do what we do, right? You know, some support to the left. But it's not a secret that the media is owned by oligarchs. But it's getting worse, especially social media.
Yeah, it's an oligarchy, no question. Like you say it all the time in the support video, like get rid of the oligarchs. It's true, but now I think it's like a digitally supercharged one. Like it's on. What's something that makes you go like that? I don't know. Something that makes you go crazy. Like I think we've gone from press barons dominating front pages to algorithms shaping entire worldviews, and that's a really scary time to be in. And I think that's a dangerous like feedback loop because we've got big tech boys, big tech extracts, advertising, and then that entrenches existing media monopolies. And I think it makes disinformation very, very profitable. I think we've seen it happen with plenty of events that have happened within recent history, and then we're seeing the profit that is made off of that. And it's not just a British problem, but this is a global problem. I think Canada's got its own battle with Meta at the moment over news payments, and that's showing how ruthless these platforms are. Zuckerberg, I think, simply pulled news entirely from Facebook feeds, and in Australia I think they've got a similar force that's happening over there. But speaking about Britain's history, I think historically they have failed to implement the full Leveson reforms, and it's kind of like left the door wide open for this oligarchic consolidation. The Murdoch playbook of bending politics to media empires has now gone global, and today's tech billionaires make Murdoch look quite quaint. And if that's not scary, I don't know what is.
Scary thought indeed.
Yeah.
Before we go on to our last story, though, I just want to say if you're enjoying the show, then please like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. It's so relevant how we're talking about media oligarchs. So why don't you support us instead? So if you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. We are facing a global oligarchy, and now more than ever, do we need radical independent media. So please help whenever you can. Let's move on to our final story of the evening. Donald Trump and Elon Musk's feud has exploded. The two have publicly fallen out over social media. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. Excuse me, I'm trying to do the Trump voice, it's not working. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. To be fair, he's not wrong, right? Musk should have never had government subsidies in the first place. Now, Musk responded by saying, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DGT." DGT? Oh, God, sorry, it made me laugh so much. Have a nice day. Essentially, Musk went nuclear. But, of course, this isn't a surprise. I mean, we knew. But you know what? That's actually made Musk look really, really bad because he's basically admitted that he'd happily supported Trump whilst knowing him being on Epstein's list. Trump fired back on Truth Social. "I don't mind Elon turning against me, but he should have done so months ago. This is one of the greatest bills ever presented to Congress. It's a..." You'd have to do me dirt by taking the graphic down. It's a record cut in expenses, $1.6 trillion, and the biggest tax cut ever given. If this bill doesn't pass, there will be 68% tax increase and things far worse than that. I didn't create this mess. I'm just here to fix it. This puts our country on a path of greatness. Make America great again. He continued, "Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do. And he just went crazy." You're crazy. But what's interesting is that Musk also admitted that he bought the election. "Without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude." But what sparks the fallout? Well, it started after Musk attacked Trump on his latest piece of legislation called the Big Beautiful Bill. Of course, it's the Big Beautiful Bill. Right, I will stop being Trump. Musk complained that not enough cuts were made in the bill, but crucially, a tax break clause for those that buy EV vehicles was removed. So, of course, that's going to hurt Musk's profits. Sarah, let's be honest. I mean, two of the worst people in the world fighting is funny. But Musk admitting that Trump wouldn't have won without his backing exposes that elections aren't won democratically, but who's got the biggest wallet.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, your impression of Trump was top tier. I was so impressed. Anyway, you've got to teach us how to do that. But it is entertaining to watch two cartoon villains kind of like slap each other. It feels like we're watching Looney Tunes, and it's insane to think. But Musk saying, "Yeah, I bought Trump the presidency," is one of the most revealing things a billionaire has ever admitted about the state of capitalist democracy. It is scary. We're not even talking about like campaign donations anymore, because Musk literally owns the digital town square and has used it to shift public discourse. Him even reinstating Trump on X, he's amplified far-right influences, and now he's bragging that without him, Trump would have lost. That's not democracy. I think that's just the oligarch's pet project, and that's a really, really scary time to exist within. But this Trump-Musk soap opera, I think, is exposing how fragile the whole ecosystem is. Anyway, I think 1 minute Musk is basically Trump's kingmaker, like, "Oh yeah, let me get a chainsaw and I'm going to back this guy with all my heart." And the next he's dropping Epstein file bombs on him, like it's on his own platform. It's insane. So I think imagine what happens at the next election when these personal vendettas actually start bleeding into how content is ranked, or who gets visibility, or what goes viral. I think the public then becomes collateral damage in the latest, billionaire slap fight. And I don't think that that's a fair fight to make. It is just two big children pointing fingers at each other and saying, "But you said, and you did, and I did this for you," and rah, rah, like grow the fuck up. I think that's the problem. I think democracy under the model is increasingly a sideshow to the oligarch wars. And I think it's no coincidence when you've got like the likes of Berlusconi, in Italy, he pioneered this in Italy. He controlled 90% of the TV, turned elections into like personality cults, and then insulated his own corrupt empire. But the difference now is scale. You've got the Musk and the Zuckerbergs and the Bezos of the world, and they kind of sit atop of this global media infrastructure. It ties really nicely to the second story. So yeah, it's funny to watch them implode, but it's actually quite terrifying too.
I mean, the signs were there for a while, because basically both Musk and Trump have sort of diverged on economic policy, right? I mean, one thing they have in common, which is clear, is that they obviously want power and wealth. They want themselves to be richer. But I think Trump is more ideological in certain aspects. I think it was, obviously when it came to tariffs, right? Musk was actually at the same time saying, well, I would like to see no tariffs on the European Union. I would even like to see freedom of movement from the US to the EU, because, of course, he wanted that freedom of capital. Look, obviously the left defends migration, right? And, one of the things we did defend was freedom of movement, because you can offset that by regulations and unions. But there's obviously a way for the oligarchs to use migration to essentially reduce wages if they can get their way, and that's what they do. They would infiltrate Parliament to do that, right? And I think that's what Musk wanted to do, but Trump wasn't willing to do that. He wants his nationalism, right? Musk isn't actually interested in nationalism, which is also really, really confusing, because Musk is a Nazi. He absolutely is a Nazi. He absolutely
100%.
is a white supremacist, right? There are some people who are probably around Trump who don't subscribe to that. They just want their class represented. And you would think Musk is that kind of guy, right? Especially when the guy used to post about LGBTQ high rankings for Tesla. And, for him, being wealthy, being the richest man in the world is his number one priority. But you've seen his support for the AfD in Germany and other far-right parties. That is part of his ideology. But it seems like where it could clash, again, when it comes to freedom of movement and nationalism, and even tariffs, he would rather stick with his own sort of economic policy, which he's always supported, whereas Trump wants to... I mean, look, his base would be very, very angry if he turned around and said, actually, I don't want nationalism. So there was splits there, and I think this was always going to happen. But I love the way you framed it. It's like the oligarch wars. It would be very funny, but we're caught in the middle of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I do like it. I mean, the girls are fighting, as AOC said.
fighting.
The girls are fighting.
The girls. They
The
are.
girls.
The girls.
But no one's winning here.
No, but history's given us these cautionary tales before, like about this kind of like oligarchic media power. I think over a century ago there was that newspaper baron, William Randolph Hearst, and he famously said, like, you furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war. And then Hearst's papers didn't just report the news, they literally manufactured it. They fanned the flames of the Spanish-American War of sensational and sometimes fabricated stories. And you're kind of seeing the same thing happen now, like, and that's a really, really scary time to be in. I think trying to use that dominance to blanket the airwaves with content that's favorable to yourself is a cause for concern. And I think, like, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing them hurl accusations on social media towards each other. And what are we doing? We're lapping it up. All of us are kind of just like, wow, look at them, just two children, like a reality TV sideshow. But it's a serious omen about the state of power in our societies. And I think if here we have a former president who rose to fame on reality TV and Twitter, well, now president again, and a tech mogul who fancies himself a social engineer, like, it's fucking insane. And they're publicly arguing over who owes whom for an election win. It's absurd and it's chilling. And yeah, it's funny for us to laugh at, but it's actually so scary too. Because for those of us on the left, I think it underscores why we champion democracy from the ground up and why we want to smash the oligarchs, because you got to do it from the ground up and not the top down. I think we see clearly that billionaires are not the saviors of free speech or democracy. They're threats to it when they're left unchecked, and they constantly get unchecked, destabilizing our markets, scapegoating migrants, anti-Muslim rhetoric left, right, and center. Like, it's scary.
I mean, what do we say? Abolish billionaires.
Listen, I'm all about it. Abolish the landlords, abolish the billionaires, abolish them all. I'm here for it. But people will say you're too controversial.
That wraps it up perfectly. Let's leave that story there. But we're going to bring in our producer and we're going to go to your comments. We love this bit. Lewis, how are we doing? Please make sure you're unmuted.
Hello, I was muted.
Hello,
I'm
he's
unmuted
here.
now.
How are you?
How's it going? What a lovely show. It's been full of lots of fun drama to do with Elon Musk and Donald Trump. No, I'm joking. I'm trying to do my Yorkshire accent, but it's not working. But anyway,
I was going to say,
hi,
that came out
everyone.
quite strong.
Yeah. We have had some lovely and amazing comments today. But first, obviously, we have had some donations. So thank you, Graham Turner. Support independent media.
Graham
Turner
is so consistent. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you. Fulmar Music gifted 5 memberships.
Thank you.
For your generosity.
Thank you very much,
much appreciated.
But now let's actually go to some lovely comments. So, I want to bring this up firstly. Actually, no. Keith, I'm going to come back to you in a second. Sarah, what's the name of the Italian president that you quoted?
Oh my God. I fucking butchered it, didn't I? I butchered
Go on,
it.
say it again.
No, I'm scared now. I don't want to say it. But Bertolucci? What is it?
Hold on, don't worry though, because me and Sarah are I would say 1-1, but actually that was we got a point. We're -1-1 because I said Viscount Rothermere. I said Viscount Rothermere because I like Viscount biscuits. All right, yeah, the minty ones. So Vicky's
can I just back us really quickly? Some of us have only ever read words and names. We haven't heard them be said. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Silvio. Hyperbole. Silvio. Wait, how? Can someone actually tell me? Is it Silvio Berlusconi?
Berlusconi. Silvio Berlusconi. Bunga Bunga parties. You know, he was a billionaire as well. Billionaire, Bunga Bunga parties, terrible prime minister. Awful. Anyway, let's go back to Keith. Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon, has called for an investigation into Musk's immigration status, and he needs to be deported. So, if anyone doesn't know, the Washington Post reported last year that Elon Musk more than likely worked illegally for some time after he left university on his visa while trying to become an entrepreneur. And when you become a US citizen, they ask you a question: have you ever worked illegally in the US? And if he said no, and it turns out he did, you can have your citizenship revoked because you gained it by lying or misleading or falsifying a document. So technically it is possible. But would he go that far? Would he abuse his power that far? Is Trump that petty? I don't know.
I think so. The vulture right eating its own. Steve Bannon, the man whose entire career is basically built on nativist paranoia. It doesn't doubt.
There's no point predicting him, right? So he could do. It's absolutely plausible. It will be very funny. I know. I'm sure you're gonna make this point anyway. But as we were saying backstage about not supporting it, I mean, Lewis, I'll let you bring in your point, but I do want to say it would be very, very funny if that happens. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
At the same time, as entertaining as all of this is, and how much we hate both of these people, we need to remember, as good little lefties, is that if Donald Trump or anyone in his administration abuses their power to go after Elon Musk, we shouldn't celebrate that. Despite it'd be really funny if they ban Tesla or something like that. I don't know. It's funny, but we shouldn't celebrate.
That's our problem, though, Lewis. Being good.
I know
lefties.
We shouldn't celebrate
we need
it
to
because
be dark woke. What happens to dark woke?
Dark woke.
We need that anger.
Because if we celebrate it, we give credence.
The socialist position is to see Musk deported. No, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
But we don't want billionaire on billionaire violence, do we? We want proletariat versus bourgeoisie. That's what we want, guys.
Yeah, but I agree. I think we are. It's a fight between basically these wannabe gangsters, right? They're not defenders of democracy, and I don't think we should take sides. I think we should just expose them all. They should all just be exposed in equal measure. And I absolutely agree with you. But seeing that fracture, it is hilarious. They are.
It's hilarious. It's also cathartic because if Musk was to be deported, I would say, look, at the end of the day, you fucking got what you wanted. I mean, you helped elect this man president who did it to other people. It's fine if you're brown or if you're working class. Oh, God forbid, we don't do it to the billionaire. So in one sense, I'm like, fucking do it. But yes, I know. Good little leftists we are. Obviously.
What's really funny as well is that so if they went through all of this and he got deported, right, he wouldn't be stateless because he's South African. I think he might also have Canadian citizenship. I can't remember, but if he had to go about South Africa, he's pissed on that bonfire so many times. He's accused the government of white genocide. He said the country's a shithole. So he has to go back to another lovely hostile environment.
But don't
Anyway.
they? But can I say one thing? Because aren't they both exactly the same? They both want an authoritarian future. Like they just differ on who gets to run it. Like they are literally two sides of the same coin. They both want the same thing. So I don't know how they're pointing the fingers so harshly at each other. Come on, guys, let's be friends. Let's be friends.
Anyway, Curtis, people, love the impersonation, and yes, I purposely took away the
James
graphic.
Corden.
James Corden.
What's James doing in our chat?
Oh,
Look,
James.
we don't want you, right? You went to America. Stay there.
People hate him almost as much as Elon Musk, weirdly. Anyway, people love the voice, and yes, I purposely took away the graphic while you were doing it.
I knew you did that. I was like, you want me to do that?
You were doing it. You were really getting into it. The shoulders went up too.
Andrew,
I was
Andrew
tempted to do an
Zariati.
Elon Musk one, but I don't know how he sounds. Like, yeah.
It's so hard to do.
I don't know.
Elon Musk is hard.
Who can you do Musk?
No,
I know you're not asking me. I can't.
You just need to be gormless and pathetic, don't you?
All I say.
USA, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I can't do accents. I think all I do whenever I'm around Lewis, because he's from Yorkshire, I'm just like Happy Valley. That's it. That's all I know.
Happy Valley.
Happy Valley. That's it.
What do you mean? Like, Jacqueline would like a talent show. So we'll have to arrange that at some point.
Well, we should get some funding and we can do some IRL stuff, and there'll be like a Trump talent show there.
IRL. Cool, you're really down with the kids, aren't you? LOL.
Hey, look, just because I'm 31 doesn't mean that I can't be trendy down with the kids' skibbity wrist toilet. Fucking hell, I'm never gonna say that again.
So I don't know if you mentioned this in your story, but right now Elon Musk has a pinned tweet, and saying that he wants to, potentially start like a new party, and you could end up with like a reform conservative situation, right, where they split the vote. And Elon Musk tweeted out at one point as well, because I think somebody reported yesterday that he tweeted out like 100 times in the space of like 8 hours or something. So that was probably when he was coming back up from the ketamine hole, the hole. And if he went ahead and did this, it would obviously split the vote. The next Dems are guaranteed to get in.
He said this loads of times, though. He's always said, we need a new party of the middle. But there's no point in him saying the party of the middle, because he thinks far-right politics is the middle. Like, what is the middle? To him, he thinks AFD's fucking middle. So, and the thing is, though, look, it's an American presidential system. It's not likely to work in terms of third party. It can work over it. Although, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. Obviously, he has a big platform. He'd absolutely funnel money behind another party, but it's not going to... no one's going to be enthusiastic by an Elon Musk-backed party, are they?
No, I don't even like the verbiage like party of the middle, because I think it's just code for authoritarianism, like centrism, where corporations run free, billionaires are unregulated, democracy is just reduced.
Says, the middle, they just mean right wing, don't they?
Literally,
let's be honest.
Just mean right wing.
I'm like, party of the middle. So you're talking about like a basic sort of milquetoast social democratic society, public services in public hands, decent minimum wage, decent welfare state, not radical. Oh no, that's hard left. So, yeah.
Natalie would like to see some of your blazers back. I'll always support you, Curtis. You need some more of those sexy blazers.
It's been a while, wasn't it? I promise I will. I was thinking about it today, but I didn't, because I thought it was Friday.
What does TYO mean? Is that an acronym?
Sexy blazers.
No, to help push. I think this is a typo.
Okay.
God, you're showing your age there. That's just a typo. I'm like, what does that mean? Yes, I promise, Natalie, the blazers will make a return. Just for you.
Andrew was talking about, this is when you were talking about who's controlling the media. So, despite the censorship and algorithm issues, it provides us with spaces like this, and I'm glad for that. It is good that obviously we do have these spaces, but we do need to remember that we are so beholden to these people that if they chose to... Yeah, they not only could take it away, they could completely abuse it. They could do. They obviously already abuse it, right? They cause untold damage to society and the world right now. However, I don't even think they've fully reached their potential of like what they can actually do with their platforms and the way that they could shape society if they really, really tried to. Just kind of like Elon Musk is, right?
Well,
Like
there's
he's taken a a front seat on shaping exactly what Twitter is like. So could the other companies if they wanted to.
there's nothing stopping YouTube from just deleting our channel. They've done it
Literally.
to other channels.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to be fair, out of all of the social media websites, YouTube to me is the best. I think it's
Well, I think because in it you can support non-profit and local journalism, and I think that that's something. If we want to sort out the UK media ownership crisis, and I think it means breaking up those monopolies and enforcing or supporting, non-profit and local journalism. To be honest,
By the way, to our viewers, please check out Media Reform Coalition. Please check out their report on it. Obviously, we brought up some of the statistics. We had a chat with Tom Chivers, but it's an extensive report. It's really good to arm yourselves. So I would check it out, but also check out Media Reform Coalition, because there are people behind the scenes who really are trying to change the media whilst also supporting independent media. It's a slow slog, but
Keith has said, I didn't actually really think about this actually, because you just think of these things as just social media. But Trump and Musk were like both slagging each other off on their own media platforms.
But I said that. I did say that.
Oh,
it's
did you?
true.
It's just kind of weird, isn't it? Like it's
I
like
said that,
billionaire versus billionaire on their own social media platforms. It's just, I don't know. It's just like a weird concept, isn't it? That they've all just got their own personal social. I don't know. It's just odd. I don't like this world.
I know it's fucked up.
But also sorry, Curtis.
No, go ahead.
But also, like, their feuds, they're not just feuds. Like, they can literally destabilize markets. Like, and I don't know. Like, the side effects of them trying to push their own ego and interests means that they embolden authoritarians, and they flood the airwaves with like lies. Like, it's quite scary. They have so much influence, and it's what I said earlier. Like, they own these spaces, and they're there just doing this entertaining but morbid feud.
I just thought of something as well. If I remember correctly, I remember reading a story about when January 6th happened. Apparently, Trump drafted up a bunch of tweets that never went out. And there's a theory and there's a rumor out there that those like saved draft tweets are still out there, like on the account. And obviously, somebody like Musk would have access to them. So that could be another nuclear bomb. Because if he were to have said something else, which could be, legally damning, more legally damning, then that could also be harmful too. But I'm probably just being very wishful right now.
The thing is, even if they're deleted, Musk might have access to it. He has access to absolutely everything. When you delete something, it's never really deleted. Who knows?
Vicky said, people say the media has a left-wing bias because to their way of thinking. The factual truth, e.g. science behind climate, is woke and left-wing and reported on by the media.
Yeah. And then that's what's so difficult, because and the question I put to Tom, right, was, it's this report that comes out, right? It's every 2 years, by the way, so it's not like a bombshell report. It's just updated, but it's not like, oh my God, the media's owned by an oligarchy, and everyone goes, oh my God, what? Everyone knows that. That's like the most obvious thing. That's the kind of the bigger issue, because that's now weaponized on the right. It used to be quite easy for the left to say, look, we have an oligarchy and we need to fight against it. And the right can now go, yeah, you're right, it's an oligarchy, but it's a left-wing oligarchy. And then they'll point to wokeness, and they'll say, oh, because some people in this country don't want to kill minorities, I guess there's a secret left-wing cabal. And that actually muddies the water and makes the message really difficult. So when we talk about an oligarch, it's for people, it might not be that clear who the oligarch is, and it's a very dangerous idea. It's the idea that Matt Goodwin has been pushing out, the New Elite, that stupid ass book, where he basically says the New Elite aren't financial and political elites. It's like he even lumped in university students in there, and basically saying it's a cultural elite, and that is a pervasive idea that's been pushed by many outlets has been pushed by GB News, and that the levers of power are actually those who just want to foster social progressivism on us, when actually things haven't really changed. Just apply the simple Marxist analogy. It's just class. It's always been about class. The richest and the poorest. That is it. And the people on the right are trying to muddy that water. So it's very, very difficult.
That's exactly what I wanted to say as well. It is class, but I do find it so funny when people say that the media is left wing, because reality itself has a left wing bias, all this sort of stuff. Like, it's like saying Gravity is a Marxist plot because apples fall down instead of up. Like, it doesn't actually make sense. And like, I think sure you might get the odd Guardian op-ed, but structurally, like, this is a media ecosystem that's built to serve capital, and it's built to serve the richest, not to challenge it. It doesn't want to challenge it. And if some truths happen to sound somewhat left-wing, that says more about how far right the Overton window has been dragged, not about media bias. I mean, go ahead, sorry,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's so fine. I was just going to say the real bias, I think, is toward the interests of billionaires and the political establishment.
I mean, there's a big liberal space in the media, but this is where, kind of like America, actually, a lot of people kind of conflate left-wing and liberal. Yes, there's absolutely a liberal sector, like The Guardian, The Mirror, where they'll say nice things about migrants sometimes. You know, it's not even like particularly liberal in the sense that they don't actually stand by these principles. But you will get people saying, oh, maybe we shouldn't demonize migrants. And then people go, oh, see, that's left-wing. And it's like, it's not really left-wing, though. You know, it's a very basic liberal idea. Left wing is about challenging power, and you can't have that being a liberal. And that's something that I think, I mean, this goes broader than the media, but I think this is where the left has more traction with the right than liberals. So, like, for example, I love bringing up Bernie Sanders because he's a great campaigner. He's got his issues, but Bernie Sanders is popular with Republicans, not just Democrats. And the reason why is because he's a leftist and he talks about class, whereas your milquetoast liberal from the Democrats, the Republicans despise them, right? And I think that's where, like, a left-wing populist can get people who vote for more right-wing parties go, oh, okay, this doesn't sound like your typical liberal. But yeah, there's a liberal element in the BBC. I would say like a neoliberal element, which is like on economic issues, that's right, absolutely. But yeah, some of their writers and some of their journalists and broadcasters are probably a bit more liberal on social issues. But that's not particularly left-wing. That's it. You know,
just a few more quick comments. Edward just said he really appreciated the interview, said it was really informative. Just thought I'd put that one out there.
Yeah, it's always fantastic.
That's good.
Really good. Andrew said, break up the monopolies. Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
But also, as Andrew pointed out, going to Farage, Farage didn't disassociate from the ban policy. He just said it wasn't a top priority.
Yeah.
Like, even though, by the way, you said, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Zia or Zia.
I've been sort of switching between the two.
I always said Zia. But yeah, I think obviously it'll be a good testing ground to see how people react to the idea of a burqa ban, to see if they can, they've put their foot in the water with it now, and will they or won't they go ahead with it? But either way, I was just going to say that either way they could lose, right? If they make this into a policy, it could just turn off a lot of people. But if they don't, it's going to upset the people in their base who really want this to happen. So,
I mean, basically, yeah, Andrew is completely right. Farage is a very skillful politician. It doesn't mean that he's less right-wing than the other guys. He's just less obvious about it. I mean, I'm sure his ideology is very similar to people, I would say, like the base of reform. He's not against the burqa ban, right? He just thinks maybe, because to be fair, the burqa ban isn't a top priority for him, right? But he's not opposed to it. And to be fair, if the burqa ban was like really, really popular and it would signal a polling boost for reform, my God, he will be for it.
Yeah, I think he obviously, Andrew's right. He hasn't like disassociated from it. He hasn't distanced himself from it entirely. I think Farage is smart because he wants to manage optics ahead of an election,
which is what politics is. It's all optics,
it's
right?
Literally just that. Yeah.
Look who's in the chat.
Oh, yay!
Thanks so much, Curtis and TL team, for the interview and sharing our report. Enjoy your weekends.
Well, thank you. I'm going to say thank you to everything you've done, especially for those who haven't seen it, the Media Democracy Festival. We've put up some interviews. We did some live streams. There was a lot of tech errors, but it was our first IRL live stream. We got some more interviews coming up. Definitely check it out. But I want to say thank you to MRC for helping us make that happen. And also thank you for the report so we could share it with you guys. There'll be definitely some more exciting things with MRC coming up in the future. Mark my words.
Yes.
Right, that's it for the comments. So thank you very much, guys. It's been a wonderful show. And I will put you guys back onto the screen. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Well,
Yay.
that's it for the comments, and that is all we have time for. Again, I want to thank you to our viewers who tuned in. Of course, thank you, Sarah. Love our Fridays. Excellent
Best
analysis
day.
tonight. Remember to like this stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member for just 99p. Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you again. I'm Curtis Daly, and I will see you next time.